Welcome back to the Mom's Wealth Club podcast. I'm Lynn, and today we're going to sit down with someone I really love and respect, Maricela Hernandez. In this episode, Maricela is going to talk about how she became an investor really early, like 20 years old. She bought her first piece of property, flipped that property a few years later with a nice little profit, all from advice she took from her dad. We talk about the real story behind the highlight reels, what can go wrong with a rehab, how private money really works, why exit strategies matter, and how she matches families with a home when they can't qualify traditionally. This episode turned into a real-life masterclass, so don't go anywhere because I think you're going to learn a lot. So I'm so happy to be here today with you, Maricela. Maricela, we've worked together. I know you personally. We've seen each other in different parts of the country. And that's like the only time we get to see each other. And we need to do that again. I'm just excited to bring you on the podcast and share what you do and how you help people. But before we get to that, which is kind of the big reason of why you're here, can we start with your story? How did you find your way into real estate and then in this place where you're serving so many people?
Oh, well, thank you. And thank you for this opportunity, Lynn, to be part of your podcast. So, as you mentioned, my name is Maricela. I am the oldest of six from a Mexican family, raised most of my life here in Michigan. And just like so many kids in a Mexican household, especially when you're the oldest, you are introduced to do a lot of things for your parents at a very young age, from translating them, helping them buy a car, eventually helping them go through any transactions that they're not very familiar with, but you're not either, but you're kind of forced to put yourself in that situation. So like I said, I am the oldest of six. So my parents, I know for the longest time, their dream was to buy their first home, right? So being part of that or being exposed to it kind of instilled in me at a very young age the importance of owning something and working hard towards that dream, right? And also being a good role model and giving them something to look forward to. So for me, it started at a very young age and with my parents. How did I fall in love with real estate? Well, my dad, I would say, it all came from also from my dad. He didn't just buy one house. He would always look for opportunities to either invest in his business or buy a plot of land, because he had this thing that as long as the sun is hitting it, it's building equity. That he always said that. It's like, as long as the sun it's kind of shining on it, it's adding value to it. So always, no matter what it is, invest in land. That was his thing. So yeah, to kind of circle back to how I got started, my first investment was at 20 years old, $5,000. An opportunity for a plot of land came along, and he basically came to my sister and I and said, whoever has $5,000, here's your first investment opportunity. And that's when I started at that age. Didn't have any experience, but knowing that my dad was walking us through the process, I decided to jump to that opportunity. And sure enough, 10 years later, we sold that plot of land for a profit of $30,000, right? And I didn't have to do much. That's how I knew that I was on track if I basically follow my dad's lead or advice.
I love that. So can I ask you, I wrote that down about this, as long as the sun is shining on it, it's building equity. How do you say that
Yes.
in Spanish? Like, how would your dad tell you that?
Mientras le esté dando el sol, este va a subir de valor.
Ah,
He always had that thing,
I
that
love it.
saying.
Bonita, muy bonita.
Gracias.
Did I say that right? Muy bonita.
Yes, you
Awesome.
did.
Get
Good
me
job.
speaking Spanish.
Let's get you
So
there.
that's a great story. I love that. I know a lot of stories about you, and I never knew that like I have my origin story of you, which I think is pretty cool, but that one, I don't know that I've ever heard that one. I love that. So
Thank you. Yeah,
wonderful.
but it started, like I said, it started at a very young age. Like I said, my first $5,000, and that's where I invested in my $5,000 savings I had from my hosting job at a restaurant here in Detroit.
Well, that $5,000 definitely grew faster there and more there than it would in any bank account.
100%. And that's when I realized that, yeah, you can't keep your money in a bank while someone else is using it. But that's a conversation for another day.
Exactly, exactly. So now you got into this world of doing like creative deals and different, like what brought you to the most recent past of where you are now and then leading you to where you're really building an entire business model on?
No, so what got me? So I've been very fortunate, like I said, that my dad and my mom instilled in us about working hard, right? To have a decent living. But I also realized that I couldn't live forever exchanging my time for money, right? That's where it all came. I became very curious of, well, I can't wait for someone to tell me when I can retire. In this case, it's what, 63 years old, to start enjoying what I worked so hard for. And again, being in real estate and seeing what you can do with $5,000, my husband and I had already bought our first house, each bringing our $10,000 each. We bought our first home. We realized, well, if you can do this with just $20,000 down, what can we do with the equity that we eventually built on a home, right? So that curiosity continued to grow. And that's what forced me to kind of look for ways of using the equity that we had already on that first house because we had done some renovations. My husband had already put in the work. How can we do that to kind of acquire another property? So that's where I started. That's when I started asking myself all these questions and figuring out a way of doing it. I think that was back then we wouldn't label it creative. It was just curiosity that got me into it. And then recently, for the last 5 years, I've been doing it for a while and I started asking myself where I know with this curiosity and so much of the research that I've been doing has gotten me so far. How can I make this go by faster? Right. And that's what got me to start exploring or finding a community or groups that would teach me different ways of acquiring real estate on a non-traditional way, which is going into a bank, asking for a loan and seeing if you even qualify for that loan to buy that property. I figure there must be another way of being able to acquire more real estate. Very fortunate enough, I found the right community that really confirmed there is many creative ways of acquiring real estate or investing in real estate. So yeah, I've been doing it now for the last 3.5 years from the creative aspect of things. Before that, it was more traditional. Just like I know you and I and many of the investors in the community are very familiar with the BRRRR method, where you just buy, right? And you repair, you refinance, and you repeat. That's kind of like what I was doing. And I would consider that more of a traditional way of investing. But now we look at it, the creative is how to not just worry if you have that capital, is how to go about finding the capital to acquire additional real estate. See if that makes sense.
That does make sense. And you have a nice little portfolio. I know the first time that I helped you do your DSCR loan on a property, even though it's DSCR, it's purchased under your LLC. I got to see your portfolio, and I was really like when you start adding up the numbers, you're building up a nice little retirement and nest egg for yourself, just doing what you do little bits at a time. It builds on itself, right? And I think that's amazing. So, what's a favorite story that you have on any kind of property, good or bad or whatever? If being an investor and a woman investor, right? We sometimes face different issues than guys, or we're approached about the issues a little bit different than the men. So, what's a story that you can think of that would be fun to share?
If I was to share, I'm not going to share the one that it's been the easiest, but I actually going to share the one that it has from a personal perspective, meaning personal with my family and my health. How this particular scenario or this opportunity came about and all the lessons learned from going into a partnership that I had never explored before. Going into a property, it was in this particular case, it was a duplex, or it is a duplex that we were going to completely renovate, and then we're going to do, I had never done a cash out, right? But that it's another thing that you hear a lot of investors talk about. It's yes, do this, invest in this property, but then eventually pull all your cash out and have an asset. So I basically, I was able to apply all of these elements on this one project, and it took a lot. And then where I would love to share the story with you and your audience because of all the lessons learned. It was very painful, but at the end was gratifying to see what I was able to accomplish because there was more down, like low point than high point. If I was to kind of balance it out, but it's the lessons learned at the end of the day of what I was able to take away from this particular project. So I mentioned to you earlier the partnership. So I decided to acquire this property with a local investor that I had just recently met 2 months before, Lynn. But we both aligned with our passion for the city of Detroit. We both also loved the real estate aspect, the homes, the history that they have to offer around here in the area, the architecture. So there was a lot of things that we did aligned. So when she presented me with this opportunity to buy this property, I didn't even hesitate. I jumped to it, Lynn. In our investor world, we have a saying that you should first date before you marry. So think about it that way. It's you really have to make sure when you are going into a partnership, you understand that it is eventually it turns into a marriage. Yeah, the dating phase is great. It's all like I said, you align in so many things, but then when things start getting serious, that's when the stress starts coming in and emotions get drawn into the situation, and that's where you have to evaluate if this is really going to work out or not. So like I mentioned, I started a partnership with someone outside of my circle, my comfort circle of friends or people that I knew. Secondly, we picked up a home it's from 1902, Lynn, and we decided we were going to do a renovation on this 1902 home. Well, already age comes into play because now we're looking at a home that was completely outdated, not just the electrical, the plumbing. It's not like you're coming in and just tearing up the walls and patching it with drywall. You're dealing with plaster. So many components that we didn't realize were going to come into play when it came to cost when you're doing a renovation of that size. Another thing that was crucial for us in this renovation is not doing enough research. This property had the potential for a third unit. So my partner and I decided we were going to do a rezone of this property to increase its value, its ARV, right, after repair value. That was a bad move because we did not do our homework and try to familiarize ourselves with the city codes and the restrictions that we will have to, or not restrictions, the complexity that we will have to be familiar with when it comes to permitting. And it's the process itself and the time frame that it would take to get all of our permits aligned and the city to approve this rezoning. Now we were going from a duplex to a triplex. So many things that we lacked experience in that cost a lot of tension and stress, and even in our partnership. Something that we had scheduled or program. We assumed it was going to take 6 months to renovate. It ended up taking 14 months, Lynn.
And that gets expensive.
Thank you. So let's talk about costs, which you would know that.
And they say, we're going back to the marriage scenario, a lot of marriages end in divorce because of finances, right? So now you're being pinched by city codes and inspectors and finances are coming into play. Like this has got to be painful.
My God, great point. Yeah, let's talk about the finances, not just about the holding costs associated with it, but the stress that it was putting on us because we ran out of money. Yes, we each brought our own capital for the 20%. So a lot of the investor loans will require you to bring that 20% down. So my partner and I brought in that 20%. We were able to secure one of those fix and flip loans for investors. Usually those are 12 months. You're only paying interest on those loans. When you get these loans, very important too, to realize is you're not getting all the money up front. You're having to draw money through every phase. So it's not like, and some of your contractors don't want to wait. Go ahead.
And every draw costs you money. So it's
Yes.
not just, so these are the things that people don't realize. It's not just the interest that you pay on the draw and then the interest that you paid on the purchase part. But then you get hit every time you come back and say, okay, inspect, now I need more money. We've done this, check it out. Okay, we're good for the next a bit of money so we can move forward. And they're like, sure. And they just tack on another line item of charging you a little bit more money, right?
So great point. That's where being strategic will come into play. But now you're not the only one having to be strategic. Now you have to run it through someone else to make sure they align with what you think needs to happen next. And think about it like a playing chess, right? But now it's not just you making that decision. Now you're having to make sure that the person sitting next to you also aligns with that next move. So again, stress, right? Mm-hmm. Complexity, cost associated with it, having to eventually realize we're running out of money. We're 70% done with the project. We're 10 months in, Lynn. What are we going to do next? Borrowing money, right? PML, additional funds needing to be brought in when you had already planned out spending so much money. You're 70% done. You need still more money. Again, more cost associated because now you're bringing PML into the transaction.
And so for our audience members that haven't walked this road like you and I a little bit, what is a PML? And can you explain to them because you might not have known what that was prior to needing that money. What is a PML?
Great point, Lynn. So private money lenders. So there is individuals out there, which is great to know that they exist. These are lenders that don't want to go into the complexity that most investors will go to when they buy an asset or buy a home and they go through the process of renovating it. They're more than happy to lend you their money as long as it's protected by an asset. So they'll take a lien. They'll basically record a lien against that asset. And then they'll lend you the money for X amount of term, like months. What we referred where you'll come to a specific terms with these private money lenders. Some of them will lend you the money for 90 days, 120 days, 6 months, or maybe a year if you're very fortunate at a set rate, right? And at the completion of their term, you basically pay them the loan amount plus their fees. Most of them will allow you to do that. But remember, you have to protect their money with an asset. So yeah, we were able to secure not one, but two. We ended up having to bring two private money lenders. Our first lender was for $25K. And this is where I would advise you guys. It's great to have great families and friends that you can count on to ask them to be part of your projects, investment opportunities. But it does add an extra layer of stress because now I had brought in my best friend to be my private money lender. When I was late, 6 months later, and we're still working on this renovation, and I had already committed to paying her, it was a struggle because I didn't want to lose my friend. I knew I had a great relationship, but I felt like from the investor aspect, I was not delivering. And a lot of investors will go through these emotions because you've asked people that you know that are part of your circle that you interact with outside on a personal perspective. You know you're having all of this stress under your belt, but now you know they're part of that. They're part, unfortunately, of that transaction that is causing so much stress. How do you tell them, I'm going to get to you? I promise. And that was like, to me, every time I would see my friend, first thing I would do is apologize because I knew her money was still not being delivered. So from a private money lender, if you ever have to bring anyone to be part of your transaction, I would advise you to not go after your family and friends. Right. Just find someone who understands at the end of the day, it's a transaction. And as long as they're protected, and you and I would know through a promissory note, yes, there's a lien on the property, but in the promissory note, that's where you will define those terms. And as long as they understand that they're going to get paid and how they're going to get paid, and if you are going to be late, how they will be compensated. It just brings a little bit of an ease of mind, Lynn, knowing that the investor understands that sometimes you can't deliver what you said you were going to in that specific time frame.
And that's key because being an entrepreneur, I've been an entrepreneur my whole adult life. Most of my outside family and friends don't understand entrepreneurship. Entrepreneurship and investment and all that, in essence, is risk, right? If you're looking for a PML, you need a professional PML or somebody that is an investor minded anyway, maybe has their money put in a self-directed IRA and they know that there's risk and you're going to cover that. And I personally know that if you had to go do DoorDash, you would be paying people back. But not everybody is like that. You know, to your credit, that's who you are. But it's so much more difficult if we're borrowing money from our family and friends who know, like, and trust us, but are not of that same risk capacity, I guess, that same risk. They're more risk adverse. They're more risk. So even though your friend probably trusted you, oh, I know she'll make good, there could be sleepless nights there. And even if there weren't, you're having sleepless nights thinking they might be having sleepless nights. And it's a hard cycle. So I can imagine what that must have been like for you and what you went through on top of everything else.
So yeah, so using a private money lender, make sure they're not, like you said, make sure it's an investor. It's great to use them, but it just helps you get to the finish line, right? Especially when things that you don't foresee happening in your project, like running out of money and you're 70% done, which we never planned for. We think we're just easy, and especially when social media out there is telling us how easy it is to become an investor and buy and fix a home and borrow out someone else's money, but they forget to share what can happen behind the scenes. They don't tell you they don't let you see the ugly side of the story, which is, unfortunately, like I said, running out of money. A lot of investors having to pay in contractors that disappear on you then. And we hear those stories of, unfortunately, investors that pay $10,000, $20,000, $30,000 for a specific job. The guy disappears a week later, and you're having to not just go find another contractor, but having to try to recoup that money to compensate what that person took from you. So yeah, it's just like a lot of factors that we have to keep in mind when you are becoming a fix and flip investor too. So like I said, finding the right partner, things to look out for, making sure you understand there could be delays. You could also run out of money. But at the end of the day, the most important thing is accepting that no matter what, you're not going to give up. You're going to get to that finish line. There is no divorcing. You are going to get to that finish line to be able to do the next thing, which is finding a lender to cash you out, Lynn. And that's where you would come in, which I will say that's another thing. It's so important that you find the right individual to help you secure the funds needed to refinance your loan.
Mm-hmm. You could do all that. You were 14 months in. You could have done all that work. If you couldn't get someone to refinance you, you'd lose the property anyway. Everything you've got in it, blood, sweat, and tears, and equity, and maybe your best friend.
How much to lose, right? When you can't secure that money 14 months later, when that project is finally completed. So yeah, it's crucial for sure. And you know this because I share the story with you. We even had the issue with trying to find the lender, go through all of the phase, something that was supposed to take 5 weeks. 9 weeks later, this lender wasn't coming through. They didn't want to approve us or lend us the amount that we needed to officially be cashed out. And what does it mean to be cashed out? To be able to pull our equity as partners, to be able to pay the fix and flip loan that we had already pulled out, and we needed to pay everyone out, not just ourselves, the lender, the first loan, and then we also need to pay our PMLs, right? that officially, that's what you would classify it as a cash out. But when you find lender or you're going through the process and your lender doesn't want to approve you for the loan amount required, again, what do you do? It is crucial that you have a good understanding about the process. And Lynn, that is what you are great at. I do have to give you credit. You're a great teacher. You're not just filling out a paperwork or filling in the blanks to see if I qualify or not, but you are great at teaching people like myself of what to be looking out for when applying for these loans to get me what I need, right? So arm yourself with the right connections. Make sure that if you're not sure what questions to ask, that person's going to basically guide you and tell you what questions you should be asking. And you are a great teacher because I know through the few loans that we've done together, I've learned so much about what should I know from a borrower perspective and what should my lender be doing for me.
And I can't let you get a loan unless I 100% understand your exit strategy. What are you going to do? And you know what? I have had people that have come to me all starry eyed. They're ready to get this project. And maybe it looks a little bit, it could look good even. It could not just okay, but good on paper to begin with. But then I'm like, okay, and then this, and then what if? Well, you have to handle all the what ifs too. Our real estate market is a little crazy right now. So what if prices go down 10%? Do you have enough room? Could you hold it? Could you are your partners, if you're going to pull in some PMLs, are they willing to be not just your lender, but a partner if the market shifts? And can they hold on to it through a market cycle? And there has to be enough room because people come, Chip and Joanna make everything look simple, fun, put a little shiplap up. They always have oh, we had this horrible situation, but every half hour or hour program ends up happy. And people they really don't understand what it really does take. And so if there's not enough room, and so there's been people that have come to me and they love me and they're talking to me, and then I start talking about these things, and then they don't want to talk to me again. And I'll see them at another event, and somebody will say, what do you need? What are you looking for? And they'll stand up. I'm looking for a lender. And people know in the room that, well, they just met me a month ago. And it's just kind of funny because they're no longer talking with me. But I'm not going to be the one that skips down the fun part of the road without warning the people that there's construction signs ahead, right? Is the bridge out?
Mm.
So,
And see, unfortunately, when people have someone on their side telling them, like you said, the possibilities, if what if, and asking those difficult questions, if they don't like it, like you said, they'll turn around and they'll kind of go around the room and asking. No, those are the people that you want to have on your side. What you are not seeing or you don't have experience on, those individuals may already know or have that experience that you're lacking that you need. So someone who tells me, honestly, if I come across anyone who tells me the truth right to my face, those are basically, they're transparent. The transparency component, I'm already trusting that individual. So that's to me is more important than anything else. The what if, it's not that they're questioning how much experience you have. It's have you thought about the reality, what can happen? And it's like we're all living it right now. That market cycle that you mentioned, crucial. No one anticipated. Everyone thought that 2025 was going to be another 2023 or 2024 where everything was selling, right? People were just putting anything on them on the MLS and it was being snatched. Things are just sitting in the MLS right now, Lynn, and investors are hurting because they only had one exit. Let me fix and flip and put it on the market, right? And let someone else buy it.
yep.
What happens when you're having to be holding onto that asset? You got your lender was supposed to be there for 12 months, now going after your property and threatening to foreclose on it. What are you going to do? Where's your work going to go? Just because the right questions were not asked.
Right. And it's happening and it's exciting. Doing the whole thing is fun and it looks cool and all of that until it's not. And it's just really important. And here's another thing. There's so much money out there that if you
Mm-hmm.
find a broker that or a lender that just wants to find you a loan, a broker like myself, I have 25 different lenders I can go to right now, and then from there, I've got a network. I can get more. I can get your deal done. I can
Mm.
get paid, have fun, but so there are brokers that will definitely go to the closing date with you without even knowing that your exit strategy may or may not be feasible. And you don't always have, just having a backup exit strategy is important. That's all.
I agree.
We plan for the worst. Like, well, what happens if you need to hold it for 3 years? Can we do that? Okay. Do you have any other property that has enough equity in it that if we needed to pull a little bit out of that at the right rate? Because rates are okay, right? As long as you're still cash flowing, can we maneuver things around a little bit? Now, there's things that you can do to structure deals to make them happen. But if you've never done a fix and flip, or you lived in a house and you fixed it up while you were there and then you sold it, that's not a fix and flip or fix and hold experience. That's like you got lucky and you used your own money. That's not, there's such a different piece of it that's just not talked about on HGTV.
Mm. So stop watching it, right? That's the first
Well,
advice we're going to give them.
no, but it's fun. I do love that because it gives us ideas. You just have to be smart about it. And another thing that's huge is to go into a deal with an experienced partner. Bring somebody into the deal, and maybe you have to do more of the grunt work, or oftentimes we all just want to be our own hero. But sometimes it just really helps to bring somebody in that has the experience. Find the property, go out and work with wholesalers, or acquire the property yourself, or door knock, or find that one that has enough equity that you could bring to somebody that's trusted, that's already done 15, 20 properties, and sit back. And maybe you don't make that much money. Maybe if there's $60,000 to be made, maybe you make five. But now you saw all the different pieces of how things can happen. It doesn't always have to be that way. There's people that can go in and have great luck. And those are the stories that we hear and the stories we cling on to. So I don't mean to be like negative about it or rain on people's parade, but you just got to be smart, like anything. And then any money that you invest, and any money that our PMLs invest, that's the difference between an investor and borrowing money from, your best friend or your mom, is that an investor knows they don't invest money that they can't lose. It's called investment, and investment comes with inherent risks. And so if you lose the money, are you going to be able to pay your own mortgage? Are you going to be able to go on your own vacation? Are you going to be able to have your own dreams, right?
Mm.
And then if I give you my entire nest egg as a friend, and then I'm just like, what do you mean we lost it? It's a total different ball game from an investor that's got, you know what? I've got 50,000 I can put toward this project. I don't want it to lose. I mean, I'll protect myself and I'll do different things. But if I lose it, it stinks. But I can go at bare minimum, wholesale 5 more properties, and I'll get that 50 grand back. Or, it's like, I know I can replenish that money.
So that's a great point about when you decide to be an investor, that you ask yourself, though, even from becoming a private money lender, that you keep in mind that, you're not going to jeopardize losing anything or sacrifice your family because you've landed this money and there's a risk of losing it.
It has to be money that you can maybe not easily, but somewhat easily replace. If you have somebody that just works 9 to 5 and scrimps and saves for every dollar, and they've scrimped and saved enough to have 25 or 50 or $100,000 that they can loan to someone, like that's a lot of scrimping and saving. Right? I don't know that it would take a lot of years to replace an additional 50 grand door dashing or whatever. But you have an investor that plays a little bit bigger and says, I don't want to lose it. But if I do, I know it would take X amount of deals and I'll go back again. We've played cash flow, we've played Monopoly. We know at that level you can replace it, but to just borrow it from somebody that's just worked so hard, and it would hurt their retirement or their lifestyle or their familiar relationships with their spouse or their, whatever. That's not the people that we want to PML with, even if they get excited because they're watching TV too.
So let's talk about diversification, right? So even from if you exploring the option of becoming a private money lender, which I've actually done myself personally, just so I can, how can I be one if I haven't been one myself?
Mm.
So if I've landed in deals, I've learned don't take all your capital and put it on one project or one person's project. Maybe take little chunks and put it in different people's projects in case someone doesn't deliver. You still have 3 or 4 other people cashing you out. So that is one of the advices that I would give anyone who's considering of lending any hard-earned money that they have, that they know that the bank is hardly paying anything for it. But if you have $50,000 or 20 or 30, don't put it maybe not all on one transaction. Split it into two, just so you can learn from both experiences. And the risk is kind of like it's not as high, but 50-50 chances you'll get paid, and hopefully you will get paid on both of them and make it a win. So yeah, diversification on anything you do. I think you would agree with that too, Lynn. Even if you're buying assets, decide is like, do I do just single family homes? Do I do multifamilies? And if it's a multifamily, how big that I want them to be? How it's like this is where you start exploring at the different options that you have. Um, Explore the options, see what that cash flow looks like, and decide it's like, okay, how many do I need to have of each to secure that cash flow that I'm looking or seeking at the end of the month. I even for my personal as an investor, I don't just buy and hold. Like I said, I do the private money lending myself. Um, I've done not just long-term rentals, but I personally do a midterm rentals too. It's just because I feel like it's necessary to understand that. And then another thing that I like to do, and kind of not just it brings me satisfaction to say it, is I'm not just growing my personal portfolio is how am I helping someone else grow their portfolio. And that's one of the other things that I also am very passionate and I do on the side, Lynn. And that's how you and I got a chance to work together for a year, is by helping other people. And it circles back to my background, my story. I knew how important it was for my parents to secure their home. How can I help someone else secure their home? Not just me growing my personal portfolio now as an adult, but how am I helping someone else do the same? So that is one thing that I like to do myself.
So that's exactly what I want to talk about. I love what you do and how you help people. So set the story up. How are you helping people get their first home? I see your thing up there. I help families buy their first home. Tell me what you mean by that.
So my niche is, again, coming from a Mexican household. I know Hispanic families, that is their dream. So that's why I say first home, right? Buying their first home, but they can also be your first investment property. So one of the things that I'm able to facilitate in the process is if I have a family who has some savings, but unfortunately is unable to qualify through the traditional lenders on a loan, I am able to help them secure that home by offering what we call seller finance. And how that works is we're able to secure the home. We'll have a mortgage already in place. What we'll do is then we'll turn around, we'll put it out to our different community groups in the different states. We do work with families throughout the United States that are looking for a home. And all they have to do is basically show us that they have an income, biweekly or monthly income, because we don't want to take anyone's money, hard-earned money, as a down payment, knowing that they don't have an income coming in every month and they won't be able to pay that monthly note. So for us, it is very important that we kind of do a little evaluation to see where they're at and how much can they afford to pay a month. And if that is the case and we have that an asset or a home that we offer them to go see and it works out for their needs, we'll be able to secure them through a contract. We'll close on a transaction through with a lawyer and allow these families to, instead of paying the bank, they're paying our servicing company, who will then be responsible for paying that lender, that note that we have, that mortgage, and whatever money we have left over. it's basically we'll get a monthly fee. From the investor perspective, that's how we get paid. But we make sure that the family is completely protected through an official closing, and then we'll do a servicing and make sure no one's making any mistakes, that the note is getting paid or that lender is getting paid, that the taxes and the insurance, the home is protected. That is one thing I always advise my buyers. Make sure that whatever property you get, all the paperwork is being done through an attorney, and that your home is secured with a policy, insurance policy. Because God forgives, if anything happens. Now, again, you're at a loss if this asset was to unfortunately catch on fire or get washed away. So that is one thing that my job is to not just sell someone a home, that I educate them in the process.
Right. I love that. That's the American dream, right? To own your
It
home
is.
and to just feel safe, because so many people have to move and move and move and move. And, and every time you move, it costs so much money. Your kids are going to new schools. You might not even be close to your work anymore. And you get moved out of an area that you could afford to live, and everything comes farther and farther out and no control of your life as a renter. So to plant your feet and have that kitchen be the heart of your home and be able to live there and raise your kids, raise your grandkids. It's beautiful. And I love that you do that. So if somebody needed to get a home, what's your process? Like you'll find them and then you find the home. I mean, how do you match these two things up?
The way we usually do it is we first try to secure the property, right? Understand what terms we have to be able to turn around and offer it to a buyer. But in a particular case, everyone's scenario is different. I've had buyers where the opportunity that I currently have it's not what they need, right? Like you said, maybe they need a bigger home or they're looking for some more land. That's where we'll take the time to understand their situation and what they're looking for. And if the numbers make sense and they're able to show proof that they have access to that capital, we will shop on their behalf. In a sense, if you think about it that way. And I'll use that because you helped me with a specific transaction where I had a particular family that I had brought them a home. It was a beautiful home, but we understood that maybe the monthly was going to be too high for them, but they had a good chunk of money for the down payment. They just wanted the monthly to be lower, Lynn, and I respect that. I understood that he had the money for the down payment, but he didn't feel comfortable paying $2,800 a month. So what we were able to do for this particular family is we were able to shop around. I worked with a local agent in the area and in the state of North Carolina, in their particular city. We had him go visit a few homes within the budget, because I am able to help them with that. Look at the purchase price, look at the down payment, and basically make sure it meets that monthly payment that they need. So we don't want to go for a $300,000 home when we know they want their monthly to be $1,600. So we're able to help them even with that. So like I said, we work with the local agent. They visited the home. They picked the home that they felt was going to meet their needs. In this particular case, he wanted a basement and he wanted a plot of land. So he wanted something closer to an acre. And what I did is I was able to secure the funding because he didn't qualify for the loan under his name. So that's where that creative aspect comes in. We were able to apply it, and I was able to secure the funds that he needed for that loan to buy that property that him and his family really wanted. And now what we've done is we've secured him with the proper paperwork, where it's not my house or it's not my company's home. It's his home, but just the note is not under his name, if that makes sense.
It does make sense. And so now he has a term, in this case, 30 years. Most likely he'll try to pay it off earlier.
Yes.
And
And that is one of the things that I made sure, and I'm glad you brought that up because it's very important. A lot of our buyers, they don't want to be locked down for 30 years, Lynn. They want to make sure they have at ease. They have that ease of mind knowing that if they have any extra capital, they can pay down their loan. And that is one thing that when we are buying any property, we don't want to have any balloons or any restrictions, because we know that most of our buyers are going to be able to pay their house sooner.
It's beautiful. I love it. I love it. And I love that is now you're building a business around that. reaching out to the community and helping them both come through you if they need somebody like you to help them get in the home and purchase that through you, or even go directly. We've hooked them up with some owner occupied lenders through my company. And if they do qualify, but they didn't think they qualified, now you're able
Right.
to come in and have that conversation similar to what I do with the lending. I have what my exit strategies. What are we going to do? You're having an entrance strategy, right? Like, how can we get you in the home? How could you possibly qualify if you thought you didn't? And then if you thought you didn't and you still can't come in with that owner occupied loan, we can maybe go in there and find something the way that you find for people. So for me, people say home ownership is a right. Home ownership is a right with responsibility. So if you're responsible enough to save that down payment and to learn that that is possible for your family, I believe that everybody should have that.
And I like that I'm going to kind of steal something from you. The right from a buyer, but the right from as an investor. Myself, I know I have to do right from an investor. Yes, I am facilitating this buyer to secure their first home, but I have a responsibility as an investor to do things right for that buyer. All right. So by kind of like doing something like that, like you mentioned earlier, the what if you lose your job, would you still be able to make that monthly payment? What if you were to have to relocate? What's going to happen here? How are we going to protect this investment? Who's going to be able to step in and take over? That they even understand that if they have to relocate, that they know that they can rent that monthly payment can get covered by if they had to rent the home, that monthly payment is going to be covered by that rent. That is the right thing we should be doing from an investor perspective when we are allowing someone to step into that becoming a first time home buyer too.
And that's huge to have somebody that has been in this real estate space for long enough and working with different people and being an investor for you to be able to say, okay, this is what the rental rate is. And so if you needed to leave, it will cover that for you. You still have a home, maybe you can always come back to, or maybe now you're just an investor and somebody else is paying off your loan and you're growing an asset for some future time, or they could sell it, but you're taking the time to go through all those exit strategies with your buyer is huge.
So that's one of the things that, remember, as an investor, we have to ethically and morally do the right thing. So again, it's not just building your own portfolio, but if you're helping someone else do the same or learn what you're doing, that you teach them to do their best. To me, is if I'm going to help anyone, again, from a private money aspect, I actually landed on a transaction recently, and it's supposed to be only a 90-day, Lynn, right? It's her second investment home, but I told her, I want to sit down with you and let's make sure you're on track to refinance, get this house rented, and do an official cash out. I'm not just lending on her transaction. From an investor, I feel that I have to do the right thing by walking her through the process because I've already done it. It's the least I can do is teach her what I know and get her where she needs to be. So that's all I ask anyone who's listening to this, Lynn. Don't just do the right thing for you, but just also make sure you do the right thing for others.
Absolutely. And that's what we do here. It's educate. Like I've walked you through the lending part of it from the side
Yes.
of hard money. And we've learned a lot about acquiring properties and how much room there should be for cash flow before we even put it under contract. Like, don't even look at a property unless it matches all of this. If you've got, I was at a REI meeting last night, an investor meeting last night, and there was a young couple trying to buy their first property. And so they wanted to look at it. They were going straight to, I want to talk to the seller and see if they're open to creative or seller finance. And okay, so have you underwritten the property? Do you know what your buy box is? And then they go, oh yeah, we know our buy box and this is that. And this is the only problem with this one is we wanted our buy box to be like below 500 and this one's 1.2. And I'm like, right there should
Mhm.
be a hard stop. And I'm like, this is where my mama is going to step in because I wasn't there in the role of being in it. But I'm like, this is where my mama is going to come in and say, my mama-ness or whatever, going to come in and say, how does that even make sense? For your first property, for you to not just one, it was almost three times, two and a half times
Yeah.
what they said was their limit. And how is that a smart investment decision? Because it's going to cost 10 to 20% more when you get in the property anyway.
Hmm.
We first had our first investment property. Within the first 3 years, we needed a new air conditioner. We started with a microwave. So that was easy, a couple $100, right? We needed a new dryer. It's more than a couple $100, right? Then we needed a new air conditioner, an entire air conditioner. And now the new air conditioners don't work with the old furnaces, right? So if you get a new air conditioner, you need a new furnace. We had to buy a new hot water heater. So it's always going to cost more. And with all of these little things, it eats away at your cash flow, right? So you have
Hmm.
to be careful and but if somebody doesn't have and plan for all of this stuff, it's so easy to get starry eyed and make decisions that aren't good decisions. So that's where coming in, walking with your people, what do you want to spend each month? Okay, would this house even positive cash flow on a long-term rental? That's another thing people do. Go, well, I could short-term rental it. Great. Talk to all those people in, outside Disneyland or Disney World in Kissimmee, Florida. Kissimmee. I wanted to avoid saying Kissimmee. It's a Kissimmee or Kissimmee, whatever it is. But all those people that bought short-term rentals thinking Airbnb, oh, this is just hand over fist money. And then those particular counties said, oh, that's not legal here anymore. Right.
And
So
it's happening everywhere.
yeah, so you have to have a buy box that specifically says what and do it before you're emotional about it, before you fall in love with the property or the idea of a property. And just that has to be it. Like you've got to be smart with your money. And that's how you get wealthy, not making decisions of, based on emotion.
Emotions, and again, we're going to circle back to don't try to be at the standards of someone who's been doing it already for 5, 10 years and has not sharing their story. They're just showing how they're acquiring 2, 3 properties a month, right? Or generating X amount of dollars per month on cash flow. Let's be realistic. We all have to start from the bottom. So it's okay if it's going to take you 2, 3, 5 years to secure that 1, 2 properties. That's fine. At least you did your homework. You've become familiarize yourself with the process, and then you can do like what we say, wash and repeat, right? Go after your next based on making sure you iron out all of those little wrinkles in the process. So I do advise people to do that. Hey, believe me, I'm guilty. I too want to put myself at a specific level when I see everyone's doing so much. But then I have to ground myself and it's really analyze, is it based on my experience? Is it really possible? Can it be done? Yes. At what risk too? We talked about risk tolerance, Lynn. At what risk tolerance? What is it going to do, not just from your finances? What is it going to do with your personal? What I'm trying to say is, how is it personally going to affect your relationship with your loved ones? Because the more we gain, the more time we're taking away from our loved ones. Because everything just takes time, Lynn. And you and I know this. We have families, we have spouses, we have friends that we want to spend time with. But if you're just focused so much on getting more or acquiring more and more and more, you tend to disconnect yourself from your loved ones. And I'm one of them. I'm guilty for it. Don't get me wrong. I've done it. But then I've come to realize that, is it really worth it? What am I doing to push away my loved ones to acquire more? But for what if I am not enjoying what I currently have? That is also very important that you ask yourself that question as you're growing in this arena.
And there's very few, everybody says, I want passive cash flow, I want passive. there are very, very few passive deals. So it always costs more time and costs more money than you ever think it's going to do. All right. This is awesome. I'm excited. I'm excited to continue to help more families get in their first home, get their first investment, walk that journey with you. And if somebody wanted to reach out to you, what's the best way to reach out to you and have a conversation, whether they're an investor or whether they're a family that is thinking about buying a home?
Can reach out to through my social media, either Facebook. Anyone who's interested in reaching out to me, they can always reach out via Facebook or Instagram. That's a great way. And then we can just schedule a call, see how we can help them for sure. Either, like you said, buy their first home or buy their first investment property.
That's beautiful. So I think if you are thinking at all about purchasing a property and you think that you can't, maybe you are a foreign national, maybe you've been here for a long time and you just haven't been able to do that, it is definitely at least worth that conversation to talk to Maricela and see if it's a possibility, something that you might not have even dreamed about. So, well, I just want to thank you so much. I love talking with you all the time.
Same here.
Today was great. I loved hearing a little bit more about some of your stories, and I'm excited to see what we accomplish and how many people we can help in the next 6-12 months even.
I always say, let me use my resources to help you. And I know you are one of them. So thank you for the opportunity to work with you and allowing my future buyers/investors use you to get to where they need to be, which is securing those properties.
Okay, thanks, Maricela.
Thank you.
So that was great. I hope you got a lot out of it too. Maricela, I'm so grateful to you. And so are all the families that you've helped in partnering with them, in loaning money, and definitely the ones that you've helped get into their first home that might not have been possible without you. So I hope everybody listening gleaned something that they can take and run with, because this was a really powerful episode. As the founder of Mom's Wealth Club, I empower women to become confident real estate investors through education, support, and access to capital. Listening to my borrowers and good friends like Maricela has impacted my life, and I hope that she has helped you think about real estate just a little bit differently. And until next time, keep learning, keep growing, and remember, a wise woman will prosper. So buy the field, plant the vineyard, and watch it multiply.